I also want to highlight here, we're getting into what is it, right? So it's not just provide and pray. There's also many facets to social. The keynote title is a strategic approach to social. I'm here to talk to you about one kind of social engagement, really the make part, right? Now, other things you can do in social media, which are all very valuable, we've got analysts that cover this and give you lots of great advice on it, but I'm not here to talk about, is social monitoring. We're not going to get involved as an enterprise, too scary right now. We're simply going to listen to the crowds. We're going to do sentiment analysis and so on across Twitter and Facebook, and based on that, we may make some product decisions or discounts or what have you. That's all great work. There's lots of little boutique firms that can help you with that. Monitoring social media is almost a must-do these days. How many of you are already doing some kind of social media monitoring in your organizations? Yeah, a few of you. Also, marketing on social media, that's great too. You know, having a Facebook page for your corporation or your agency or what have you. I'm sure almost all of you have that now. It's almost de rigueur to have a Facebook page. And that's usually a one-way, outbound kind of interaction style. We post corporate communications and so on our Facebook page or Twitter, and we're not really expecting too much in the way of interaction. That's great too, and again, probably your Marcom folks are all over that. I don't want to get in their way. Again, we've got analysts and there's products and boutiques that can help you with that. What most of our clients ask us about when they're asking for a social strategy is really that last part. How do we actually harness the power of our employees, our customers, our partners to actually work with us and for us to get useful things done, to actually make something of value? And if that's your goal here, and I hope it is, because that's, to me, the most exciting part of social, it's most transformative. Listening to people, marketing to them, that's not transformative. Some new channels have opened up, that's great, but the transformative part is really in that make dimension. And my favorite example of that is not Twitter, it's not Facebook, it's not LinkedIn, it's not any of these sites. It's actually been staring us in the face for well over a decade, but because we didn't put the social label on it, it kind of it doesn't get our center of attention. And the kind of work that is really social, but very productive nonetheless, is open source. Think about it. Hundreds, now thousands of open source communities, the top ones of which have transformed the software business, things like Linux and so on. Those are people voluntarily getting together in their spare time to do more programming. Most of them are already paid programmers, right? And they can't get enough of it. They want to go and contribute even more to these open source sites. So how do open source communities get people to voluntarily contribute time and effort, you know, I would say almost blood, sweat, and tears, because it's that painful sometimes to ship some of this stuff, to actually produce some great software? And how can we harness that for things beyond just open source? So I think it's, again, transformative, but you need a different way of thinking about it. So the how we do it is going to be very important. Now, a little context setting. Gartner, I think like a lot of organizations now, see a lot of tectonic forces in play, social being one of them. We have what we call the Nexus of Forces, and the big four are social, mobile, information/big data, and cloud. All of these coming together to transform applications, processes, enterprises, and so on. Social is a major one. It's almost sort of the people part of the four forces. And if you want a great example of how more than one force comes together, enterprise has done, I think, a very interesting social community-based effort with, I'd say, arguably, three of the four forces, and maybe even big data could be part of it. But the notion is we want to share rides. We want to have a corporate van pool, right? And let people sort of set these up, let the actual participation emerge from the actual employees trying to arrange rides. You might think, well, this is something you can do very straightforwardly with a little bit of mobile. You need that, obviously, so you know when your ride's coming and so on. But what more do you need than that? It wasn't until I had a conversation last night at the reception that even I understood some of the really deep social dimensions to carpooling. Some of the things the groups talk about and agree on are, what music are we going to listen to on the ride in? And if you don't think that's important, you haven't been in a carpool before, right? It's extremely important. Actually, I carpool my kids to school, and it's always a fight. I want to listen to NPR. They want to listen to Rihanna. It's a never-ending battle. I wish I had this app and I could override them. So absolutely, a social dimension to a process like ride sharing, absolutely essential. Another dimension or set of dimensions is the kind of interactions, the kind of capabilities you're looking for in a social community. I don't have a lot of time to go through all of our sort of frameworks. This is one of our framework slides here, the 6 principles of social collaboration. Let me just highlight overall that really the top and the bottom of this diagram. At the bottom you have things like persistence, independence, and transparency. These are attributes or capabilities or principles that can be, by and large, delivered by the technology. So the bottom part of this diagram is technology enabled. So transparency, having a place to go to see what's already been discussed, already been decided, questions that have already been answered. It's absolutely essential. Independence, I can do it and participate anywhere. Right? That's where the mobile comes in. Persistence, making sure that nothing gets lost after we've had a great meeting, a great set of agreements. The top part of the diagram are really those principles that are people-oriented, right? Participation, the collective, the group, and that can go from mass, thousands or millions, down to dozens. And there's a fine line between, group collaboration versus mass collaboration. I'm not going to get into the details there. And these are the kinds of things that you need more of a sort of people set of methodologies around, right? So don't forget the 6 principles. If you're interested, we can dive into that more deeply. In fact, I should have mentioned right up front, a lot of this research has been summarized out of Gartner Research notes into a book by 2 of our analysts, Anthony Bradley and Mark McDonald, called The Social Organization. And there's some great description of the principles in that book. You also want to look at the styles of collaboration. There are a lot of different ways of collaborating beyond just, again, the Twitter, Facebook kind of like and dislike, tweet, and so on. And I'm not going to go through all of these. I want to highlight a couple of them just so you get a feel for these different collaboration styles. And yes, like the principles, they can be mixed and matched. You can do 2 or more at once. So a couple that I'll highlight are this notion of emergent structure. And I have here up here, Army doctrine. Turns out the U.S. Army is feet first into social. They've taken all their Army field manuals and turned them into wikified manuals, where now the rank and file troops, who are in some cases still in combat positions, can actually comment on the field manuals. Getting away from the old process, which was 5 or 10 years after the last battle, you finally publish the rules of engagement and best practices from the previous war, right? Now it's done in real time. And if the Army is willing to open up and do it in a more collaborative way, I figure almost any organization, no offense to the Army, but they are old school, can do this. Another government-related example, regulation.gov. Anybody have gone there yet? You can now go and comment on virtually all the federal regulations being enacted as we go, day to day. Regulations.gov. And I went out and checked it recently just to see how active it is, because sometimes these places get launched and there's not a lot of interaction. Turns out there's a lot of healthy interaction on a number of the regulations. Anybody want to hazard a guess on what the most commented on regulation in the last 6 months has been? What? No, that's a good guess. That's a good guess. No, you'll never guess. Wolverines. There's the regulatory decision about whether or not we make them an endangered species. 8,000 comments. 8,000 comments, which I think is a great message. You never know until you really dig down into this, and I'll talk about this more when we get to purpose, what's going to turn people on. You can't go in with kind of top-down expectations about this. You really do need to reach out to the actual stakeholders, the actual potential participants, and ask them what turns them on, and then try to harness it. It's a complete inversion, right? It's that democratic aspect that Mac talked about. So Wolverines are the #1 legislative issue in this day and age, which I think is heartening in some ways. The other one I'll talk about, which I usually always skip over in most of my presentations because almost nobody's doing it yet, except for first responder organizations, is flash coordination. Now, we've all seen the fun examples of this. Grand Central Station, everybody freezes all of a sudden and freaks people out, what's going on. So it's a fun example, but how do enterprises put this into play? And it turns out that you'll be hearing a lot more about this. I won't steal their thunder, but Crawford & Company is actually doing kind of a first responder flash coordination social application around their claims assessors. So they have this catastrophe personnel tracker, as you see here, and they can coordinate on the ground, on the scene, when a major disaster happens to make sure the right kind of claims adjusters and so on are in place to deal with those issues. So again, this notion of unstructured plus rapid change, nothing exemplifies that more than something that occurs after a disaster.